We begin the current Daf from Mesechta Gitin Daf, and then hey, begin 4 lines down from the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara continues with this same theme that we've had for many blot already, many Mishnayos, all the way deep into the last parak, the concept of Tikkun Olam, about different things that were instituted because of a remedy for the world. But our Mishnah just starts with different ideas because it's regarding different idiots. It's different testimonies that were said by the same Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. The later ones are for Tikkun Olam, so we first start off with his whole teaching, but again, it then leads us right back into this concept of Tikkun Olam that we've been discussing. Cheers, corresponds to Bekazach and Cheskel, turn to Daf Yomi. Appreciate everyone joining today's Daf. Something discussing today's Daf are the 4 testimonies of Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. First one is Al Chareshes Shesia Avia. If you have a deaf mute woman that her father married her off, she yetz beget, which is a chiddush because a Chareshes doesn't have das, and she wouldn't be able to have her own biblical marriage. Her father married her off, which her father could marry off, and therefore making it the biblical marriage, but still she could be divorced with a get, as the Gemara will explain, because we don't need her das. And the second testimony was Val Ketana Bas Yisrael, a minor Bas Yisrael, meaning not daughter of a Kohen. Shenish is a Kohen, got married to a Kohen. Shoicheles bid Truma, she eats Truma, which is also a Chiddush, because her marriage is only rabbinic. Biblically, she's not married. And then Mesa Bal Yarshib, she dies, her husband inherits her. The third teaching, this is where it comes back to the Tikkun Olam, someone steals a beam. Shabana Bibira, now he builds it into his palace. Sheyitel is Damav. That the owner of the beam cannot demand, I want my beam back, because if he wants his beam back, the whole building comes down, and there's millions of dollars invested into this. All he has to do is pay for the value of the beam. And the fourth halacha was Valchatas Agzula. That if, let's say, someone stole a chatas, I mean, he stole an animal, and he brings it as a karma chatas, but no one knew about it, it could be considered as atonement, and it's Mabnei Tikkun HaMizbech, and the Gemara will explain what's the Tikkun HaMizbech, but really it shouldn't be an atonement, or maybe possibly yeah, because it's not really his. So why specifically when people don't know about it, then it will be considered as a kapara, which this depends on the machlekes whether Yish Kadi is Kani or Yish Kadi is Loy Kani. Is just the original owner giving up hope of getting it back, does that make it that the one who stole it acquires it? Or does that require also a Shina Rishus, a change of domain, which is not the case when someone steals the animal and brings it, there was no Shina Rishus? Would that be kinda or not? And some of the point in terms of the concept about sikrukin are certain types of crooks that from the term of so karka vanicheni. Sikrukin is so karka. Take this land, leave me, don't kill me. And that's discussed whether when the guy who does that is that he's totally giving it over to that guy and you buy it from that guy, therefore then you bought it, you acquired it, or do we say that no, the guy really planned on still getting it back, it was not miyash. So we begin the current Daf and Gitin Daf, and hey, 4 lines down at the top of the Yomid, we continue with the next Mishnah, again continuing on ultimately the same theme of Tikkun Olam. Now, hey, Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg has testified regarding the following 4 halachas. Number 1, Al Hachareshes Shesi Avia. A deaf mute that her father married her off, where there's a chiddush in this case. Even though her father accepted her kedushin when she was a minor. Now, when a girl is a minor, she always doesn't have das. She doesn't have intelligence. How could she get married? You need to have consent. That's because her father has the rights to marry her off, as the Torah tells us. So she becomes a bona fide, full-fledged Eishes Ish, married woman. And even so, says Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, she yetz beget. She can be released with a get, and she herself can receive her get, even though she does not have intelligence. Because when a woman goes out from a marriage, she goes out even forcibly. And we don't need her willingness for divorce. So therefore, we don't need her das. So therefore, that's the chiddush in this case. Even though she's biblically married, still the husband could give to this chareshes the get herself. Halacha number 2. Malkatana Bas Yisrael, a minor, a young girl, who is the daughter of a non-Kohen. Shenish is the Kohen that gets married to the Kohen, and she's an orphan, where her marriage was only rabbinic. Her father didn't marry her off. She got married herself to this man. Sheicheles b'truma, that she eats rabbinic truma through this marriage, and that we're not geyser anything, as we'll explain in the Gemara, what would be the concern with truma d'oraisa. Now, v'meisen, if she dies, Bala Yarsha, her husband, although it's only rabbinic marriage, her husband inherits her. Takana Adius, the third testimony, this is where it takes us back to Tikkun Olam, is valamarish hagazel. If there's a stolen beam, shebanoi bebira, it was built into a huge house. Sheyitel is damav, where the owner takes its monies, but not the beam, because of the remedy for those who want to repent. Meaning, if you can require this guy to rip out the beam from his house, the cross beam, and to return the beam itself, it's going to stop the guy from doing tshuva. This is what it means to do tshuva. I have no more internet. That's it. No more whatever. I got to cut this all out of my life. I can't do that. It might hold the guy back. So we don't require him to give back the beam itself. We just require him to give back the value of the beam. And the fourth takana is Valchatas hagzula, a stolen animal that this guy brings as a chatas, shaloi noid delarab, which the public doesn't know that it was stolen. Shehi mechaperes, that it will be considered as an atonement, and he does not have to bring another chatas. When they tikkun hamizbeach, because of the remedy of the mizbeach, the Gemara is going to explain. Now, like Rashi says, because of the last two testimonies, which are takanas, therefore, we said these four testimonies of Rabbi Yochanan Gudgada, because again, that's the theme of our Mishnayos, of tikkun olam, of remedies for the world, of different social institutions because of different ideas. Now, the Gemara says, going back to the first teaching of Rabbi Yochanan Gudgada, Amar Rav, he says, Me'edusa shel Rabbi Yochanan Gudgada, from the testimony of Rabbi Yochanan Gudgada, we learn that Amar le'edim, if someone said to witnesses, not in front of the woman, look, I'm giving my wife a get. Then, after he says it to the witnesses, he turns to his wife, after he whispered to the witnesses, here, take this document of a debt, and he doesn't let her know that it's a get. So, Harizah Mugerashes, she's going to be divorced. What's the raya? Because Mila Amr Good, didn't he say Lebin Daita? We don't need the woman's awareness, her consent, because a Chareshes, a deaf mute, doesn't have das. We don't need her to have her intelligence. Meaning, her awareness is not critical. So he's telling her he's embarrassed, whatever. He's just saying, hey, take this, the deed we have of the house. Here, you hold on to this. And he gives it to her. But he told the witnesses before, and who they're the ones who have to know this, he says, I'm giving her a get. So therefore, we know this from the halacha that you don't need her das. Chareshes, you never have das. So here also you don't need to have a das. So the Gemara said, pshita, that's obvious. What are you telling me? Like you learned this out, you're such a lamd, and you learned this out from Yochanan Gudga's teaching. Isn't that obvious? Says Gemara, no. What would you say? Since he's telling her, here, take this shtar chayiv, you would think to say betuli batle, he's nullifying the get element of it because he's telling her it should be something else. Mashmalan, no, that's what teaching us in Misa de Batle. It was true that he was nullifying the halachic element of this being a get. I mean, not every time if a guy has a get and he hands it to the wife, just hold on to it. It doesn't have to be giving it to her as a get. Maybe he's being mavatla as a get. No, it's not true. He would have said that to the witnesses. He says, guys, I'm just giving it to hold on. I'm not giving it to her as a creases yet. So must be this that he's telling it to her, mishum kisuf. He's just embarrassed, he's ashamed. And therefore he tells her that it's a shtar chay, but really he's giving it to her as a get. That's the chiddush that you can learn this out from the halacha of the Eidus Rabbi Yochanan Gudgada. The second teaching that he said was about Ketana Bas Yisrael. If you have a young girl that's a Bas Yisrael that's married to a Kohen, she could eat truma. So the Gemara makes the interesting following dig, and if you're paying attention to the Mishnah, you notice this. Vilu chareshes. Now, regarding a deaf mute woman, who her father did not marry her off, she got married herself to the Kohen when she became an adult. It would sound like from this second case of the Mishnah that loy achla, she would not be able to eat truma. Why? So Rashi explains. The Tana changed his words. Case number one, Rabbi Yochanan Gudgada, was talking about a chareshes, who does not have das. He left the case of chareshes and picked a katana, who also has no das and also is not married off by her father, was a Yisaimer. Wait a second. Why are you switching from chareshes to katana? Why didn't you talk about a case of a chareshes married to a kohen? The inference is because if she was an adult chareshes, that her marriage is rabbinic, which is the equivalent of the case of a katana, that she would not eat truma through her kedushin. That's the diak the Gemara is making. Why you transfer from chareshes to katana? So and that says Gemara, my timer. What's the reason? But the marriage of a deaf mute man to a deaf mute woman is also rabbinic, as the Gemara says in Yavamas of Kafid Beis and Beis. Why should it be any different than the rabbinic marriage of a young girl to a man that's a kohen? It should have the same halacha. Says the Gemara, it's a gezerah, it's a rabbinic decree. What's the problem? Shema yachal cheresh. Maybe a kohen that's a cheresh will feed bichareshes. Meaning, if you're going to permit a pikeach, a regular kohen, to feed when he's married to chareshes, rabbinic truma, you might cause a case of a cheresh to feed his chareshes. Now, the Gemara is going to ultimately explain what's the problem with that. But first, the Gemara is saying, if we don't have a pikeach to a chareshes, we're okay with that. The pikeach is a smart kohen. He knows what to feed his wife to chareshes. That's a rabbinic marriage. And that's okay. That would be just like a pikeach married to a katana, which, yeah, you could feed her a rabbinic truma. But if we let a pikeach married to chareshes, if we're going to have a case of a cheresh married to chareshes, we're going to run into a problem. Which the Gemara says, what's the problem? Even if he's going to feed her biblical truma, but v'leichel, let her eat, because katan eichel nevelasu. This is a halacha of what's called a minor. The Gemara in Yavamis and Shabbos talks about this concept. A young child could eat not kosher. This chareshes, since she doesn't have intelligence, she's like a young child who could eat not kosher. As the Gemara says in Yavamis Av Kavidal Med Alf, that the courts are not commanded to separate them, and even biblical truma she should be allowed to eat. So what's this problem? You tell me that you really could have a pikeach married to chareshes. The problem, however, is going to be when the cheresh is married to chereshes. And what's going to happen? What's going to happen is he's a cheresh. Cheresh gets married to chereshes. A katana, not necessarily. A katana get married to an adult man. She's just younger. She's 10, whatever. But if you let pikeach to chereshes will marry of her own kind. She'll marry cheresh. Cheresh have versteitnis, Wolfskeit vorher, hat nicht das. He's going to give the chereshes truma gedola. Truma deraisa. And what's going to happen? Truma deraisa, it's only a rabbinic marriage. You're right, that's a problem. Biblically, she can't eat truma. Okay, and what's happening? So she's eating something forbidden. Okay, but she's like a cotton. How's das? A cotton that eats something not kosher. The father might be different in halacha and private halacha might, but someone else.
What's the chash from Chareshes eating truma? That she will be
It's a biblical isser. A biblical isser for a non-kohen, which if you're
no, he Charesh was a kohen himself.
Right, so he's allowed to eat, but his wife, they're biblically not married.
Say why?
Because they don't have das. Kedushin to happen, you need to have das. Chareshes can't really get married biblically. Rabbinically, they made a rabbinic marriage. Because Lamais, they have to get married. Someone have to have a companion. But that's only rabbinic marriage. You give a truma deraisa, you oiva isa deraisa, chorus. So the Gemara is saying that's the gezerah. So the Gemara says, what gezerah?
How do we know that truma is das?
No, not truma, kedushin. When you get married, you have to have a kinyan. They don't have kinyanim. They don't have das. So
he can't be trying to through a bia or star.
No, because he can't make a kinyan. Even when you're doing bia, has to have al das haret mukadeshes liba bia zu. You can't create a kinyan. So the Gemara said, but what's the problem? Who cares? The chareshes, let her eat. Truma deraisa. We don't have to stop her. It's called nachal nevelazu. Says the Gemara, yeah, but it's a different gezerah. Gezerah shemeyachal cheresh. We can turn to the case if the kohen is a cheresh, who his kinyan is not a kinyan minatayra, bipikachas. He'll marry a mentally sane, a fully all her senses intact, who she is prohibited. So it says Rashi. So therefore, we were geyser by a pikeach married to chareshes, which really that should be okay. It should be just like the case that the second 80s that Rabbi Yochanan Megudiga says a katana married to a kohen. The same thing should be really. We should allow also a chereshes married to a kohen. But if we let a pikeach married to chereshes, we might let the other way, a cheresh married to pekachas. So therefore, we didn't let even a pikeach married to chereshes. Now Rashi says, wait a second, why did you say the same problem by the case of katana? Why didn't you say that if an adult kohen is married to a minor katana, we shouldn't let it because the other way around? It says you can't make such a gezerah that if the husband is a katan and she's a gedola, because a katan doesn't have nisuin even rabbinically. as the Gemara says in Yavam Sef Kovid Beis and Beis, a shaita and the cotton that marry women, that women are exempt from chalitza and from yibum. There's no marriage at all. By a cheresh, so we made a rabbinic marriage, but a cotton doesn't have a rabbinic marriage, and the Gemara says, why not? Because he's going to become an adult at one point. We have to make a rabbinic marriage for him. So there wouldn't apply this gezerah. But by pikeach, married to chareshes, the gezerah would apply, and therefore we say that case, you wouldn't be able to, like the Gemara says, gezerah shema'az. Oh. So now the Gemara says, wait a second. But v'lechel, why don't you let the case that your whole gezerah you're concerned about is when he's a cheresh and she's a bekachas, where she's not, she is mitzvah, she's an adult woman that is totally sane, but why can't she eat b'truma d'Rabbanan? Why don't you say their rabbinic marriage should help for at least rabbinic truma? Where rabbinically they're married. It's a Gemara, but it's a gezerah. That's a decree. Again, the husband is not so. He doesn't have all his das, and he's not going to realize. He might feed her biblical truma, and that would be for her issa d'oraisa. So therefore, she cannot eat even rabbinic truma, and because she cannot have rabbinic truma, so therefore, even the inverse case, the flip side, which should be totally okay, even there they made a gezerah that the pekech me'et chareshes also cannot feed her truma, and therefore it's only said this halacha by a katana basisosh and this lekain shechas b'truma b'meisa b'ala yash. Now the third halacha, which really was what takes us back to the Tikkun Olam theme of our Mishnayos, was valamarash hagazel shabani. There's a stolen beam which is built into a building, and you have this whole beautiful house, and turns out that it was stolen. And the guy comes knocking on the door, says, I want my beam back. No, I want my beam. This is my beam. It's part of my pool house, and I want it. The guy says, my whole house runs through this beam. So the Tikkun Olam was, you don't have to return the beam. Because the guy's not going to do tshuva. The guy's not going to want to return it. So the Gemara brings actually that it's a machlekes. Someone stole a beam, and he built it into the mansion. They say, that's it, you got to knock down the whole mansion. You got to return the beam back to the owners. You got to give back the actual beam. They say, no, it only gets the value of the beam itself. We sometimes we can't see things straight because it's not going to happen. As you cook the nasi of the oilam, says that's it. You return the monetary value and not the beam itself. Now the fourth one, a little bit more complex, was balchatas agzula v'chulu. Regarding a stolen animal that he brings as a chatas, we said that if people didn't hear about it, okay, still a hate would say it's going to atone. They take him as be'ach. But if the gzela was publicized, no, the carbon is possible. The gazan does require another carbon, and there's two explanations of this halacha. Says the Gemara Amma Ula, interpretation number one. Ula says like this: that Torah, really, according to biblical law, there's no difference. And both interpretations, I'm going to say, it's no difference between if people found out about it or not. Like our mission does differentiate, but they're coming from opposite angles. His angle is bein noida or bein loy noida. Whether people did find out, whether people did not find out, from biblical law, ein mechaperes. A stolen chatas cannot provide an atonement. My time, what's the reason? So it's based on the principle of if yish kadi. What's halacha when there was only yish? The original owner gave up hope. Without shina rishus after the yish, after the guy gave up and never switched the domain from the gazlan to anyone else. If it would have gone to someone else, that would be different. That everyone would agree, yish and shina rishus takes us all arichas on this, but then it would be considered as that you acquired it. But if there was only yish, says Ula, loikani, you did not consider acquired, and Rashi explains, and Taisa delves into that, regarding the hakrava, regarding the carbon. So even though we find out that the owner gave up hope, we won't call it karbanai. It has to be his carbon. It's not his carbon. It's still owned by the victim. And so therefore that's a requirement of biblical law. So then the question becomes, why did they say, if biblically it's not your carbon, why, if no one found out about it, would we consider it an atonement? Says the Gemara, a very interesting answer. We don't want the come to be depressed. That they ate chulin, they were slaughtered in the Hazar, which is forbidden. Taraif. We don't want them to be depressed, so we're going to make it that it worked. That the guy doesn't have to bring another carbon. So on that, Amalei Rabban Ula, the rabbi said to Ula, how could you say that's the reason? That wasn't the words in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, because of it's taken for the Mizbech, because of the emotions of the Kahanim. What does it have to do with the Mizbech?
Otherwise, every carbon would need a sharichas. I mean, you can never be.
No, it's a chiddush to think that a guy's bringing a carbon.
From a stone.
It's a guy who double parks going to shul, like the guy who's like on his way to do a mitzvah. I'm saying the guy's going to get an atonement and he steals the animal just already gotta be next level, right? I'm saying you're already going to bring a carbon. It's not so shver because we do it all the time, but not necessarily such a common coming to Beis Hamikdash, you're bringing a carbon, you stole it, right? So, but like upon it's not what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says it's tikkun hamizbeach. It's not the tikkun kahanim. So Malham, he says, yeah, kim the kahanim save him since the kahanim are depressed. Nimtz mizbeach bottle comes out that the mizbeach is going to be bottle because they're going to stop doing the avodah. So if if the Rav's not feeling well, the shul comes down. It's nothing to do with it. It's a mizbeach, of course. The kahanim will do the avodah. So that tikkun hamizbeach means because of the kahanim. Now Rashi has a very critical question. He says, wait a second. How could the courts make a condition to uproot a biblical halacha? This guy never brought a karban chatas because it wasn't karbanai. And you're telling me because the kahanim are going to get depressed that this guy gets off the hook without bringing a karban chatas? He never brought a karban chatas. Says the Gemara in Yavamas of Talim and Beis, Sheval Tasa Ishani. When you stop and you don't do anything, is not considered oiker actively uprooting. You're just passively uprooting. That's a fundamental difference in how you uproot. Since it's passively, not requiring another carbon, that the Rabban have the ability to do Sheval Tasa. You mean to say depend? Well, there is a discussion regarding when did they find out. So Taisa discusses that, but let's say they only found that after it's done. I don't know if they could retroactively do after the carbon was brought already and it wasn't his carbon, to retroactively make it that it was always his. I'm saying, but the Bezin doesn't know yet. So you want to know if it's an ungan, like how.
What about the Gazlan that needs a kapur? How could you make him be mechuper? The Torah is not mechuper. Okay, I hear the Chum said nothing, but he still needs a kapur. No,
right, in the Chanami. So that's he's just asking a shai. So you're right. You're not going to have to bring a carbon. The Torah, but what's with his atonement for his actual sin? Unless you say that listening to the Chachamim is itself its own. If they say, no, in other words, if you're not mechuyev in the carbon is a kapara. If you're not mechuyev in the carbon, so then does that mean you're not able to have an atonement? That means you don't need atonement.
Was it mechaper or not?
Just owes the money for it.
I'm saying if you don't have to bring a carbon.
Say, by answering, but we answering, say, well, I'm not saying nothing.
And maybe they don't let him.
So I cannot uproot. I'm just not saying.
Right. So maybe you're right. Maybe
to worry about the kohanim. But if that's the case,
maybe
it's no
you're right. Maybe that's a penalty for a guy who stole it, that we don't let him get an atonement. There are certain cases that are too small to get atonement, like they talk about regarding gullus or certain types of cases that it's not enough or whatever it is. So like trying to remember exactly cases, but it's not going to be allowing you to get an atonement. Now this is one approach. The Gemara brings, however, another approach, the opposite angle. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Dvar Torah from biblical law, bein noida, bein loy noida. Whether they found out about it, whether people did not find about it, michaperes, it would atone. Meaning, as Rashi says, if the owner gave up hope. My time, but what's the reason? Because yish kedikani. Just yish alone would create a kinyan. So then the question comes the other way. So then, as a Gitin Tamid Beis, umatam amr, and then why did they say noida in the michaperes that if people found out about it, it's not going to be an atonement? The Mishnah said shaloi noida is michaperes. The inference is, if it was noida, it would not atone. In other words, you cannot bring it as a carbon. But why not? According to biblical halacha, it's my carbon. So why would I not be able to bring it as a carbon? So on that says the Gemara, and Rashi seems to make that deal clear because although mechaperes sounds like that this is after the fact, Rashi says that no, in the mechaperes would mean that you can't not bring it as a carbon to have a kapara, but why not? It's my carbon. The reason is that they shouldn't say that mizbeach eats stolen stuff, which Taisus asks, says, what do you mean, do the Chacham have the koyach to be Oikar Dav min HaTorah b'kum v'aseh? Here it's different than what Rashi said before on Amid Aleph. Here, min HaTorah, he does not have to bring another carbon. And you're actively requiring him to bring another carbon. So Taisa makes it sound like that as if that in mechaper sounds like after the fact. You already brought a carbon, and how are you going to bring a carbon? So that's what he answers. He says, no. This is dafka if he found out before the zrika, they were saying in mechaperes. But after the zrika, it was already atoned, they would not require him to bring another one. But he says, according to Ula, even after the zrika, you would have to bring another carbon. Because, that's not really good. But according to him, he says, it does work. It's mechaperes. So how could you go ahead and require him? He says, Taisus, it must be talking about before he actually brought the carbon. So if you didn't bring it yet, although biblically really it's yours, but we don't want everyone saying, oh yeah, the Mizbech eats stolen goods. But again, that's only a problem if it's naida. If it was not lo lenash, okay, the mice, it's your carbon.
So this is the case where institutions can keep stolen tzedakah.
What do you mean?
If a Ganav steals someone's money and gives it to an institution, the shiur, according to this Gemara, they can keep it.
Oh, you mean to say if the guy has a well, I'm saying it's only because he holds yish kadis kani. There are kinyan gezela. The guy acquires the stolen stuff, so whether it be just with yish or yish or mice, it's his. He has to pay back what he stole, but it's his. Now he gives it to someone else. So it was already kashered already. It was already laundered through the kinyan gezela that the guy had already. So that's what I'm saying. But if it finds out, people find out that the shul was built on stolen funds. The guy mamish he had a Ponzi scheme and he donated to the shul in Tom's River. And this is the shul that was built by the stolen. You don't want that happening, right? So that's no less than the Mizbeach. It's the same idea. We're on the Mizbeach to find out Mizbeach Eichel Nevelis. So we say that we're not going. If it's Neidul Rabin, then that's not appropriate to be done. So now the Gemara says the following question: Bishlem Ula. We understand according to Ula. Haynidik Tani Chatas. That is why it says Chatas, because Chatas the Kahanim eat from it. And according to Ula, the whole reason why we said that that the halacha is by shaloi noida, this can be mechaperes, is we don't want the kam to be depressed because they ate from it. But Rav Yehuda ma'ir chatas, according to Rav Yehuda's interpretation, why is saying dafka chatas? Afel oilanami. If the whole reason is that they shouldn't say mizbeach oichel gezel, to the contrary, oila is more mizbeach than chatas. So that should be the case you speak about in oil, and why dafka? Why talk about chatas? So it says the Gemara, right? Let me buy a kama. It's like we don't have to say. Meaning, lo me buy oil dikol, who I don't have to tell you a case of oil which is totally burnt on the mizbeach, and that for sure would be a problem mizbeach oichel gezelos. Of course, that would be a case that Rabbi Yehuda would say would be applicable. Ela fil chatas nam. We're saying no, even a sin offering. The chayla bedam who desalig mizbeach, where only the fat and the blood go to the mizbeach. But beidach kanim achlilay, the rest the kanim eat. That's what we're saying. It's a chiddush. Afila hachi gazer. Even over there we were geyser when there was neidul rabim. Shlo yomim mizbeach gezes that they shouldn't say mizbeach gezes. Meaning even in such a case. So that's an added chiddush. I mean, of course, oila would have been a better case, but even a bigger chiddush, even the case of chatas, which the mizbeach does not eat all of it. Even so, if it's neidul rabim, we don't want people to say that it's even eating some of the gezelos. Now the Gemara asks from our Mishnah. Tanan, we learned the wording of the Mishnah was like this. The fourth testimony of Rabbi Yochanan Gudgula was al chatas hagezula, by the stolen chatas shaloi neidul rabim. If people didn't find out about it, okay, still a hate shimach haperes. It will be an atonement. And the reason is when they tick in the mizbeach because of the remedy of the mizbeach. Says the Gemara bishlam ula nich. We understand according to Ula makes sense because, like we said, that this is the tikkun. The tikkun is if they didn't find out, that really shouldn't work, but the takana was let it work because we don't want the kam to be depressed that they ate from chulun. So we want them to do the avodah on the mizbeach. So but tikkun mizbeach, we say, okay, it's good. We'll fudge it through. Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what do you mean? It should be said the opposite. It should have said on the stolen chatas that was found out by the public that they were not going to let it rabbinically to be mechaper because the tikkun is a mizbeach, that people shouldn't say it's eating stolen stuff. So that kind of wasn't on when it's not known. The gun was on when it is known. So why are you saying the wording on of when it is known? It says the Gemara, this is really what the Mishnah is saying. Loy noid mechaperes. That's only when it's not found out that it's going to atone. And the inference is, so it's really going to the inference on the dik. Noid the ein mechaperes. It is known as not going to provide atonement, and that's when they take the mizbech because of the remedy of the mizbech. Okay, but the Gemara continues to ask now on Ula. Masav Rava asked when Mishnah Masechtas Baba Kama. The Mishnah says, Gonav v'hiktish. If someone stole something and then he made it hektish. So he took an animal, he stole it, makdish it, then he took that animal, he slaughtered it or he sold it. Halacha is, Mishalim Tashlumi Kefil. He's going to pay what's called, when you steal something and you're caught with the theft, you have to pay double the amount that you stole. Which, when he stole it, it was chulin. But he's not going to pay what's called the payment of 4 or 5 times. When you slaughter or sell an animal that was stolen, you have to pay 4 or 5 times the amount, depending on which animal you stole. Here, for the Tashlumi Dal V'hei, he does not have to pay that, because at that point it was already hektish. And there's no payment of kefil or dalat v'hei on hektish, as the Gemara learns out about Matzia, Daf Nun Zayin Mebez. Okay, that's the Mishnah Baba Kama. Number Tani Allah, we learned on that Mishnah, Bachutz ki hai gavna. If the equivalent of the case you described, instead of just regular slaughtering, but you did the slaughtering of the carbon out of the azara, onush karis, the person would get a punishment of karis for the fact that it's hektish, and he's slaughtering the animal out of the azara. Says the Gemara, v'yamrit, meaning although we were saying that for regarding the Allah of Dalad V'hei, you're not going to be chayiv because it's hektish, so to the contrary, because it's hektish, you can be chayiv for shchutei chutz. But says the Gemara, a question on Ula. V'yamrit yish kedilai kani, if you say like Ula, that just the owner is giving up hope, does not make it in the possession of the ganev without shina rishus. So kares ma'avidetei. How is the guy who stole this animal and then was makdashit and then slaughtered the animal out of the azara going to get kares? I could understand regarding the payment of 4 or 5 times the amount. That's not difficult. Why would we say that he's going to be potter because it's hektish? What do you mean, it's hektish? Oh yeah, that I could say, because when did we say, according to Ula, that just yish itself is not kaina, meaning to say that it should be able to become hektish? That's regarding the hakrava, meaning to be considered as karbanai. So it's not your carbon, but we didn't say that regarding hektish, it will become hektish, so it'll be potter from dal v'hei. But karis, if biblically it's not fit for hakrava, because like Ula says, it's not karbanai, because just yish you don't acquire it, and if you can't make it hektish, the Gemara tells us Zvachim Daf Kufid Beizim and Aleph, only an animal that's fit for your carbon in the front of the oil mayid, then you would be chayiv if you do it out of the azar. But any other case, you would not be chayiv. So the difficulty is on Ula, that yish kadi is like kani. How would you be chayiv karis if you slaughtered this animal out of the azar? What do you mean? You weren't able to be makdish it. You're able to makdish regarding dalad v'hei, but not regarding the halacha of shchutei chutz, because that has to be karbanai to be able to be makdish. You can't be makdish because it's not yours. So according to Ula, how do we understand that halacha? So Rav Shizvi says, karas min devreim. You're right. Biblically, you cannot be makdishit to be considered as karbanoi, to then be chayiv for shchutei chutz. So why are you being chayiv karas? Oh, it's rabbinic karas. So achiko Allah, they laughed on this. Karas min devreim me'ika, is there rabbinic karas? What does this mean, rabbinic karas? Karas is from Shemayim, that the way the Torah decides. Oh, how can you have rabbinic karas? Some of the Rabba said, Gavra Rabba Amma Milsa, a great person said something, like the Chukala, you don't laugh at him. It means Karish Alidei Devreim Basalai. It's biblical Karis, as he's going to explain, but that came through the rabbinic law. So he explains, Ukmur Rabbanim B'Shu say. What that means to say is, the rabbis made that this stolen animal is in the possession of the thief, if he's makdashit, that it should have a total effect of hektish taking effect in it, that he should be liable for karis if he slaughters outside, just like they made it in his domain regarding atonement. So it's a rabbinic penalty, and it's a hefker bezin hefker, and that was when he was makdash. Therefore, he's going to be chayiv for shchutei chutz. So it's not difficult on Ula. Some Rabba says havadi kamamayile. He says, but the question I have definitely on this is like this. So you told me, okay, interesting pshat. You say he's going to be chayiv karis of shchutei chutz, because the rabbis put in his possession, although it's not really karbanai, but they made it like as if for the halach of shchutei chutz, when they put it in his domain, b'shas geneva, is it from the moment he steals the animal, or b'shas hekdesha from the moment that he's makdash it? Says the Gemara, "L'may nafkamina," for what relevancy does that have? L'gizesel v'lo deiseha, for the wool of the animal that you shear off, or for its children before you makdash it. If you say that they put in his domain already from the moment that he steals it, so then he would get the children and the gizes, and he would only pay the value of a cow that's waiting to give birth, and not the value of a cow with its babies. So my what would the halacha be? When did they give it to him? From the moment that he was stole it, or only later when he's makdash it? So the Rabbi subsequently said, Mr. Logic would say Mishas Hekdesha only from later on when he was sanctified it. That a sinner shouldn't gain, because it turns out that he was gaining from the fact that they wanted to punish him and that they consider as his to be chayv shchutei chutz, but then he's gaining all this vladus and the gizes we don't want to gain, and therefore it must be later on and not earlier. Now continue Allah, the next Mishnah, continue on this theme of tikkun olam, of remedy of the world. So lohoya sikrukin beYehuda. Sikrukin is the non-Jew that's a murderer, that the Jew gives him his property as a way of redeeming his life. And he says, Sikrukin, like we said, is sokarka zu. Sikrukin is sokarka. Take this ground, take this piece of land, and don't kill me. So there was no Sikrukin in Yehuda b'harugim Melchama. When they had the war of killing the Jews, which was by the Melchama of Titus or Russia, which is very appropriate because the next Daf Yomi is speaking about the Churban Beis Hamikdash, which happened through the wicked Titus that was in Yerushalayim and in Judea. The Gemara is going to ask, what does it mean there was no Sikrukin in Yehuda by the ones who were killed by the war that they laid siege against Yerushalayim? But from that time when they were killing in the war and onwards, later on, yesh b'sikrukin, then there would be sikrukin. It did apply after the war. So the Gemara says, Kate said, so what does this mean? What does it mean the halach of sikrukin would apply? So lakach misikrukin, if someone would go ahead and buy from a sikrukin, meaning a different Jew buys from this idolater who stole the land from the Jew, b'chaz of lakim balabai. So it depends how you do it. If you first buy from the guy, from the murderer, and then you buy from the original Jewish owner who gave it up to that sikrukin, mekre batal, the sale is void, because we say that the original Jew, he's only doing it out of fear, or he could say that no, meaning because he's not going to accept the deal from the second Jew, and the Jew is going to tell that the idolater is not willing to really sell it, he's not really relinquishing, or he could say no, I prefer the second guy than the first guy, meaning I prefer to deal with the Jew than the non-Jew, but really I never gave up hope of getting it, which the Gemara is going to explain. He didn't write for him a document, so then it's void. But if he went first for the Jew, and he bought it from him, and then he went to the non-Jew who already extorted it from him, then that would be valid. As the Mishnah brings a similar type of discrepancy. If let's say someone bought from the husband a piece of property that was designated for his wife's ksuba, either it's written in the ksuba or he had given it to her as a separate property, as evaluated in the ksuba, for sure other properties. But if someone bought from the husband, and then he went and bought from the wife, now, if she's not going to do and follow in line what her husband did, selling it to this person, so the husband's going to tell her, what, you think you're going to get divorced? You think I'm going to die? I think Gemara explains about Bas. No, why are you not selling? What are you afraid of? You afraid you're not going to get the ksuba? You think you're getting divorced? So, mekre batal. The sale is going to be void because she's going to say, I only did it I wanted to make my husband, happy. Because if I wouldn't agree, he'd go into a rage and get all upset. Why am I not doing this? But Isha, if he first bought it from the wife, the husband didn't do anything yet. So this is the corollary to the previous case of the Sikrukin. And then he went and he bought it from the husband, then mikre kaim. Then the sale is going to be valid because she can't say, I want to make my husband happy. The guy didn't even go to the husband yet. Now, Mishnah goes back to the previous case of Sikrukin. Zu Mishnah Rishayna. This that we said of the halach of Sikrukin was according to the first version of the Mishnah, that by the time of Harugim Melchama, there was no Sikrukin. After that, there is Sikrukin. And we said it depends if you bought from the Balabayas first or from the Sikrukin first. If you bought from the Sikrukin first, then the Mekach is batal. If you bought from the Balabayas first, then it's going to be Mekach Kaim. But Besn Shalacharem, the later court said like this: Halakech Misikrukin, if you buy from a Sikrukin, from this idolater that's a murderer who extorted that property, Noisin Labalim Ravia, you give to the original owner a quarter, meaning, and the reason for that is why you give him a quarter of the property. Of the value, because they evaluated that a Sikrukin usually gives cheaper, and you got it for free, by a quarter. So that discrepancy of how much you saved is how much you give to the original owner of that revia. Emasai. Now, when did they say this? Only bisman she'im beyadan likach. If the owner of the property didn't have of his own money to buy back that property from the sekrukin. But if they have the funds to buy back, they come before everyone else to buy back from the sekrukin. However, Rabbi appointed his court, and they came to account that if this murderous idolater had been holding on to this property for 12 months, and the original owner didn't buy it back, whoever comes first to buy it merits it. But then you still have to give to the original owner a quarter of the value of the property. Now the Gemara asks like this: I don't understand. You told me that from there was no sekrukin biyuhuda baruga malchama, but maruga hamalchama ve'elch there is sekrukin. So says Gemara hashta baruga malchama. If you tell me when they were being murdered by Titus's war against the Jews, lahayba sekrukin, there wasn't sekrukin, meaning to say there was no one. It sounds like from the Gemara, the way that it's reading the Mishnah, that there was no sekrukin, no one was doing this. But afterwards there is sekrukin. What does that mean? If anything, people would have been trying to redeem themselves by haruga malchama. Why then was there no sekrukin? Afterwards there is sekrukin. What does this mean? So Rabbi says no. It means loydanu badin sekrukin kama. It means to say by the haruga malchama we didn't give it halachic status of sekrukin. Of course, people are giving up their property. Say leave me, take my land, take everything. Meaning because during that war it was totally acquired by the sekrukin, and whoever buys from that non-Jew, it's a totally valid sale. But from haruga malchama ve'elach, after that siege, whoever buys from the sekrukin has the halacha that we explained in our Mishnah. Why is that? What changed? What changed from haruga malchama to later on? So the Gemara explains, the Amar Abbasi says, Gimel Gezeres Gazru, there were 3 decrees by the war that Titus waged against the Jewish people that was one after the other, and therefore the situation changed regarding if we consider that the Jew who gives up his property as a total relinquishment or not. The first decree was like this: whoever does not kill a Jew, if you meet a Jew and you don't kill him, likteluhu, that non-Jew is going to get killed. So Rashi explains, so any non-Jew, if he's coming to the Jew and he sees him, he puts a gun to his head. When the Jew says, here, take my property and leave me alone, he totally is acquiring it to the non-Jew with a full heart. Because the Gemara tells them, if you hang a guy, meaning like you hold him by his head, and you say, sell it to me or else I'm going to do something to you, the sale is a sale. Because the guy's like, he wants to save his life. So here, of course the guy's going to kill you. Because or else his life is on the line. So he says, I'll let you go, but you got to give me this whole property. The Jew's like, yeah, you got the whole property. Because he knows that he's really dead meat. So therefore, we said at that point, there was no sikrukin, like as if, you bought it from the non-Jew who extorted from me. You didn't really mean to give it to him. No, you meant to give it to him. Now, Mitziasa, the second one was also, the middle decree was called the kata. Whoever kills a Jew, Laisi Arba Zuz, gets 4 zuz. So again, still people are killing Jews. But Basraisa, the last decree was called the kata. Whoever kills a Jew, Liktulu, will get killed himself. For some reason, they changed later on. So Hilkach, therefore, Kamais Mitziasa, the first and the middle decree, Kivan the Katli, since they would kill Jews, so because of the situation that beyond his control, of course the Jew's giving it up. So we're not giving a halacha sekrukin to say, you bought from the non-Jew first, and then from me, I really didn't want to give it to him. You gave it, you definitely gave it up. But the last decree, when if the non-Jew kills the Jew, he's going to get killed. They said, you know what? Let the non-Jew take it today. Tomorrow I'll take him to court. And therefore, if a Jew buys that property from the non-Jew, we say it has a halach of sekrukin, which we're going to say that if you buy first from the non-Jew and then from the Jew, it's going to be as a mekach of batal. And conscious, when you buy from the Jew first, we said, okay, then it's going to have a halach of mekach because he tended to go ahead and sell it to you. Thank you to any time for hosting us.